Hi everyone! Today we will be reading a book called Honeybees in Oman. This book is about the different type of bees and how you take care of them. I hope you enjoy! All honeybees live in colonies. Many colonies are wild, but others are kept by man. In Oman, there are two species of honeybee. One is big and one is little. There are some differences and many similarities in the ways of life of these two species, as you will see in the following pages. Below, we have examples of different shelters for different bees. On the left, we have man-made shelters. Top photo shows a recess in the wall in northern Oman, built for little bees. Below, we have hollow date logs made in Jabal Akhtar in northern Oman for big bees. And on the right, we have wild colonies. Above, there is a wild colony in northern Oman of little bees. And below, there is a wild colony in Jabal Qara, Dhofar, for big bees. In both big bee and little bee colonies, most of the bees are workers. In addition to the workers, a colony contains one queen, and also, when the bees are thriving, a small number of drones, which are males. Neither the queen nor the drones gather their own food. Both are fed by the workers. Below, we see examples of each type of bee and their sizes. The sole job of the drones is to mate with new queens. This is done once at the beginning of every queen's lifetime, on her mating flight. Below, we have photos of bees and a photo of drone mating the queen. The queen is usually the only member of a colony that lays eggs. She does this for 2 or more years, laying them in the cells of the brood comb. Here we have photos of a queen laying an egg in a cell and a photo of a queen tended by workers. The brood comb, in which the bees rear their young from the queen's eggs, and the honeycomb, in which they store most of their food, are made of wax. The wax is made within the bees from some of the honey or nectar that they have eaten. The bees may spend a lot of time and energy in making wax and building a new comb. On the left, we have a photo of a big bee colony, and on the right, a little bee colony. Below, we can also see a photo of the scales of wax on a bee. The eggs hatch into small larvae. These are fed by the workers and quickly grow until they nearly fill the cell. A capping of wax is put over the cell, and each larva develops into a pupa, shaped like an adult, but without proper wings and legs. The pupa then undergoes an amazing transformation into an adult bee, complete with wings, legs, head, and hairs, which which nibbles its way out of its cell. The whole process from egg to adult takes about 3 weeks for the workers of big and little bees. Below, we see the eggs at different stages. There is an egg, a young larva, an older larva, the wax caps, pupa, and the emerging adult. We can also see a worker feeding larva. The older worker bees visit hundreds of flowers, from which they may gather 2 types of food. Dust-like grains of pollen are packed in loads on their hind legs, and nectar is sucked into a special stomach. Both are carried back to the colony. Nectar is a special sugary liquid used for making honey. Above, we see a little bee and a big bee gather 2 types of food. On the left, we have a little bee collecting pollen, and on the right, a big bee sucking up nectar. When the worker bees find a good source of pollen, nectar, or water, they return to their colonies heavily laden. Then they do special dances which tell the other bees where to find the source by indicating its distance and direction. Have you seen big or little bees doing these dances? It's easy to spot on top of colonies of little bees. Big and little bees can often be seen collecting water from a foliage or from other sources. They collect the water for 2 reasons. Firstly, it is needed to dilute the store of honey in order to feed the adults and the larvae. Secondly, it is used to keep the colony cool, which is especially important in a hot country like Oman. The water cools the colony by evaporating. To increase the cooling effect, the bees create a drought by fanning their wings. Little bees do this where sunlight falls directly on the colony surface. The big bees fan at the hive entrance to circulate air through the colony. The younger worker bees spend their time within the nest. They clean and guard it and tend to the queen and the developing young. They also take the nectar and pollen from the foraging bees and make some of it into food, which they feed to the larvae in the brood comb. They turn surplus nectar into honey and store this and any extra pollen. Both are needed in dry seasons when flowers are scarce. Above, we have examples of a bee preparing honey, storing pollen, cleaning cells, and the guard bees protecting the colony from ants. Therefore, a honeybee colony is a community, such as an Omani village, in which each member plays an active part in making the community productive and self-reliant. In Oman, some bees are found living in the wild. You can easily identify nests of big bees as they have several combs. Little bees have nests with only one comb. In the wild, nests of big bees may be found in high mountain cliffs. Some people in the far search for these nests in the mountains and are locally renowned as honey hunters. Little bees are not found in the far. In northern Oman, almost all the wild bee colonies are of little bees. They occur on the Batana, in the mountains, in the interior plains, and even in Muscat. They build only a single comb, often on the branch of a tree, but also in caves and on buildings. Impatient people who come across a wild colony may take the honey immediately and destroy the nest. The angry bees may sting them. However, other people who understand the value of bees search for these wild colonies and treat them carefully. They may find them by following the direction worker bees take after collecting water at a pool or village. If a colony they find has only a little honey, they will leave a marker to claim it. When the comb is full of honey, the beekeepers will return. They will clamp the upper part of the brood comb between the two halves of a split stick, usually from a date palm. The brood comb can then safely be cut away with the bees and removed to a new site, or returned once the honey has been taken. Above, we see an example of the brood comb being cut away by two men. Keepers of little bees can hang these colonies in shady trees or even put them in specially made shelters or recesses in walls near flowers and water. There, they can easily inspect the colonies near their home, checking their condition as they recover and seeing when the bees make more honey. The specialist keepers of little bees in Oman are the only ones known in the world. They have developed a skillful way of managing the bees. They have even discovered a method of cutting away a section of brood comb to make a second colony with a new queen. Below, we can see a queen cell that is being left on a section of comb that will then form a new colony. As for the big bees, in northern Oman, they are kept in tubul, which are hollowed out date palm logs in some villages, in mountain wadis of the Jabal Akhtar in the region of Rostov. In the far, there is no tradition of keeping bees. After heavy rains and when there are many flowers, the bees are active and the colonies grow strong. rapidly building new comb and storing pollen and honey. The beekeeper can see this when he opens the tunnel from behind. He may also see the drones that are reared when the colony is strong. However, using a tunnel, he's unlikely to see the queen cells, as they are usually built on the inner combs. The queen cells indicate that the colony is too large and preparing to swarm. Above, you can see the drones that are present when the colony is strong. And on the right, there's a photo of queen cells. The queen has laid an egg in each queen cell to produce new queens. Some days later, up to half the bees, including the old queen, will fly away to find a new home. Sometimes further swarms will fly from the tunnel, each with one of the new queens, leaving the parent colony very weak. In northern Oman, the beekeepers try to catch the swarms, but may lose them. Colonies of the little bee develop in a similar way, particularly in the flowering seasons of the sigra and semra trees. If you gently part the curtain of bees, or if the bees have already swarmed, the queen cells and drone cells are easily seen at the bottom of the comb. Below, we can see the different parts of a comb. At the top, there is the uncapped honey, directly below the capped honey, followed by the pollen, the brood, and then the drone and queen cells. When beekeepers of the Jabal Akhtar want honey from the big bees, they cut combs from the back of the tunnel. They may eat the honey in the comb or squeeze it out and bottle the honey for storage and sale. The wax comb is usually thrown away. Honey hunters in Dhofar do the same thing with the comb from any wild colony they find. Below, there's a photo of two honey hunters using smoke to quieten the big bees. However, throwing wax away is wasteful. It can also endanger the other colonies of bees because of the wax moth pest. Old comb may already contain eggs laid by moths. The adult moths then enter the weaker hives. In turn, their larvae will destroy the comb and may thus kill the colonies. For the big bee, a new system of beekeeping is being introduced to Oman. The bees are kept in hives. These can be opened for inspection. The combs are all fixed in frames which can be taken out of the hive and returned. The combs in the lower box are for the brood and their food. The combs in the upper box are for storing surplus honey, which the beekeeper can remove without disturbing the bees. Above, we see a photo of these hives, and the beekeepers removing the different covers to reveal the lower box for the brood and the upper box for the surplus honey. There is also a smoke can, which is used to calm the bees. By looking regularly in the beehive, the good beekeeper can check the condition of the colony. If the queen is old and laying only a few eggs, he can introduce a new one to the brood box. Initially, she's kept in an introduction cage until the workers get to know her. After release, the queen is prevented from laying eggs in the honeycomb above by a mesh through which only the workers can pass. Above, we can see the queen introduction cage, as well as the mesh which is used to exclude the queen. If the beekeeper sees there are no stores, he can provide sugar syrup to keep the bees alive. He may also feed sugar syrup a month before a main flowering season. This helps the colony to become strong at the time when the greatest number of flowers are open. The bees will then forage actively and make honey for themselves and the beekeeper. If the colony is very strong and rearing drones, the beekeeper should look for queen cells. Their presence indicates that the colony is preparing to swarm. To prevent this, the beekeeper can put half of the frames with their bees and one or more of the queen cells into a new hive, so increasing the number of colonies. Each hive will have a queen of its own and space for the colony to grow. Honey can be taken from the frames in the upper box without destroying the comb. First, the wax cappings are cut away. Then, the combs, still in their frames, are spun round in an extractor. The honey flies out and collects in the bottom of the drum. The empty combs, still in their frames, are returned to the upper box. Finally, the box is put back on the hive. Because the bees can refill the empty comb, they do not have to waste honey, time, and energy to make new wax comb. Bees need to visit thousands of wildflowers of many kinds in order to collect enough food and make honey for themselves and the good beekeeper. Can you make a list of all the plants you've seen bees visiting? Were they collecting pollen or nectar? What season and time of day was it? If we examine pollen collected by bees under the microscope, we find it is made up of thousands of little grains. We see that the pollen grains of each type of plant are slightly different in shape and size. This research can indicate which plants are important as pollen and nectar sources for making honey. Beekeepers can then move their hives to places where these plants flourish. Below, we can see the differences between Sidra and Simra pollen. Bees visit the flowers of crops too, such as coconuts, mangoes, limes, alfalfa, and watermelons. While collecting pollen for themselves, The bees carry some from one flower to another. This process is very important in some plants because it pollinates the flowers. Better fruit and more seed is then produced. Because bees are so useful, you must protect them. One danger is from poisons sprayed on crops to kill their pests and diseases. These poisons usually kill the bees as well. They should never be used when bees are visiting crops in flower. Another danger comes from natural enemies of the bees. In Oman, hornets, birds called bee eaters, toads, and other predators feed on bees. Various animals, such as honey badgers, hornets, and ants, steal the honey. The wax moth larvae eat the wax and destroy the comb. These pests may kill a small or weak colony of bees, though a strong one can normally protect itself. Good beekeepers will help protect their bees. They may put grease on the sticks supporting little bee colonies to make it difficult for ants to reach the nest. A trap made in Oman catches hornets. Can you think of better ways to protect the bees? In spite of experiments in Oman, there is not yet a successful hive for little bees, and no way of extracting the honey without destroying the wax. Unlike big bees, little bees are difficult to keep in hives. Like nomads, they rarely stay long in one place. If their honey is taken, or if they are disturbed too much, they may all fly away. Can you think of ways of making little bees easier to manage? Why not test some yourself? It is important that people learn to understand and protect the honeybees in Oman. Look after them properly. Then, the bees will improve the yields of your crops by pollinating their flowers. And of course, the better you look after the bees, the more of their delicious and valuable honey they will produce for you.